Stop the presses!
Stop the presses.
I'm talking about an episode, Tristan. Yeah. Yes, cliche title, but really, honestly, I have to say one of the best episodes so far this season.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this was really fantastic. And it shows how a slice of life episode of David on the Run can really make a strong thing, and how important McGee is to the storyline.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
was a predominant part of this episode, but I think the other element of this episode was it was a fun episode. And
oh
I
yeah,
think for you and I, we seem to really gear into that. Because that's kind of the
Mhm.
things that we picked on, well, we really liked about the trucker episode. And that was one of our standouts from the past season.
Yeah,
You know, this is bleeding into that same kind of vibe, that same kind of feeling. It had those humor elements. And
yeah,
so yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
and of course we like it when David gets the girl. Um,
In this case, two girls.
yeah, quite frankly, it's like, hey, hello, ladies. There's more than enough Hulk to go around. Uh,
All right, so
you
let's get
know,
started with this.
okay.
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
This is GammaCast. I am Dave. Online, I have got co-host Charlie.
Hello.
Today we are talking Stop the Presses, Episode 9, Season 2. Director Jeffrey Hayden. Writers are Karen Harris, Jill Sherman Donner. For some reason, I had a feeling that was going to be female writers. Original air date, November 24th, 1978. Location, San Diego, California. Synopsis. David's picture is taken by an employee of the National Register while working in a restaurant that is subject of a smear campaign. Now it's up to David to break into the National Register building and get the picture back before Jack McGee sees it. Unfortunately, Mr. McGee happens to be working late that night. Dun dun
Of course.
dun.
Now that's interesting. I did not realize this was in. I did not realize this was in San Diego.
Yeah,
I
so
actually thought this was in Chicago, and now we know where the National Register is headquartered. It's headquartered in San Diego. That
right.
to me that is really interesting.
Yeah, I know. In previous episodes, I think you had conjectured that it was somewhere else. I
Yeah,
don't
well, I
remember.
conjectured that it was in Florida because
Right.
the Inquirer was for a while based out of Florida. Um, and when I first saw this, I thought it was in Chicago, primarily because it's an Italian restaurant. Um, but I will say this though, on this, they did not do enough with Pat Morita. I think that's a something we could probably all agree on, that Pat Morita did not get enough story in this. But then again, they did have three main characters between Banner and then the two restaurant owners, who I also felt did not get enough screen time. What did you think, Phil?
Dave.
Oh, Dave. Oh my God, what podcast am I on right now?
No, I agree exactly what you're saying about Pat Morita. He had such a funny element to this episode where he gave a few good one-liners and his comic delivery just spot on as it normally is with everything that he touches. And I wanted more. I wanted more of Pat
Yeah,
Morita on
yeah.
this.
And just the idea of the Japanese chef
In the Italian
running
restaurant.
Yeah, it's just so perfect, and you just feel like there was so much more story that could have been there, and I have to imagine that there probably was before someone else rewrote this to make Dave and McGee the central characters.
Yeah, and the two owners of the restaurant, they're running an Italian restaurant. It was just so funny because they're sitting there flirting with David, and then at the same time they're telling Pat Morita there's not enough garlic on the pizza, and then the other one says, "Oh yeah, there's too much." It's just funny. It was very funny because the way Pat Morita was playing in between that, he goes, "Yeah, they're going to be throwing ravioli at each other for you." It was just hilarious, just absolutely hilarious the way they played onto that.
Although kind of makes when you take it in the whole of it, it kind of implies that when this story ends, it ends poorly, because when we think about, if we jump forward to the end of this episode, Pat's gone and David's gone, and just these two women who can't agree on how to cook Italian food left running the restaurant, probably ends badly. But we're not going to dwell on that.
But I mean, credit to the writers. They had written two strong women that are sitting there, and they've got the gumption of I'm going to run this restaurant. Through all of the trials and tribulations that come their way, they're going to make it happen. And one of the trials and tribulations for this episode was just what the smear campaign that one journalist for the National Register was doing, and that was what they had to barrel through in order to get through and become successful as a restaurateur. And
Yes.
So credit to them for giving those the owners of the restaurants the power to be able to do that.
Yes, without a doubt. No, I mean, this was a really good episode. I think anytime you look back at an episode from nearly 30 years ago, you're going to find things that don't sit as well with the modern writerly ethos, partially because these tropes have been explored. These ideas have been done, and at a certain point, it seems like lazy writing. And to that extent, so from that perspective, yes, this was a very interesting and progressive and great story. I'm not going to say this was not one of the best ones so far this season. I think that this is probably second only to Marriage.
You think
or Marriage?
So you think this is after Marriage? You think Marriage
Oh,
or Marriage?
Well, I think Married had. First off, it's a much longer episode. It's 2 hours. So you get a lot more character growth and development in that. There are flaws with Married, of course. But I think that Married was a great exploration of the characters at hand. And for what it's worth, as great as it is to have Jack McGee back in this, he's still not doing much. And I think that's, it's both, one of the, here's what I'll say about the Jack McGee conceit, is it's a great out for Banner, but it's not a great development for the character. In that we never really get Jack McGee, nowadays. Again, you have to look at it in how we approach a reporterly character nowadays. Nowadays, Jack McGee would have a wall of weird. He would have a wall of Hulk. He would have this thing with little ribbons tying one thing to another. He would have an entire visual representation of what's going on with the Hulk to help him sort through this mystery. And we don't get this. All we ever get is Jack McGee at a desk waiting for someone to call. which is why Jack McGee winds up going all across the country and not be in the right place. He's in Florida because someone saw a skunk ape when he needs to be in San Francisco for the Hulk tearing through the dojo from previous episodes. I mean that's where you find yourself, is that
well, I think that really gives us a lot to discuss during our season 2 wrap up, where we're going to be talking about our favorite episodes. And obviously, I think, it's going to be fun to explore, our favorite Jack McGee moments and our favorite episodes overall. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I want to get back to this episode.
Yes.
We've got David working in this restaurant, as we stated. Where I want to disagree with you is Jack McGee. I think where it solidified some development was solidifying the development of him as an ethical reporter. Now he's in a sleazebag type of newspaper, like a National Enquirer type of thing. And the people that are getting predominantly, more press in the National Register are the people that he's having the issues with in this specific episode, where we have that one reporter who says, I'm going to go out to these different restaurants in the area and I'm going to plant, problems, and then I'm going to have photos taken of it, and then I'm going to expose those, even though I planted it, which was really unethical. And Jack McGee realizes that, and he's like, you know what? I don't want to have any part of that. I don't even want to have any part of what you're doing. What I'm doing is real reporting because I'm reporting the truth.
Yeah, which actually gives us an interesting take on the National Register. First off, what is interesting about the National Register is that it is not, apparently, per se a national paper. I mean, it may be a tabloid that is in the local, that is at your local Piggly Wiggly, but it is in fact a paper that has a San Francisco beat. That what is going on at a local restaurant is of enough importance.
And what you meant was San Diego.
San Diego, that is more important than a Hulk, which is arguably a very national story. And that is one of these things that is interesting about this story, is how it does give us more backstory on the National Register, really kind of presenting it as much more of a local paper than we had previously seen. This is much more a New York Daily News, which is a tabloid press, which does have some sensational headlines, but is a real legitimate newspaper, rather than, say, a National Enquirer, which is, of course, national, but that is largely manufactured journalism. There's no real there. It's, someone said this about this, so I'm going to write a story about that. Sometimes what they said was accurate, sometimes they said was not. We're not going to consider that. Here we see that in this case, the National Register is, like the Daily Bugle of the Marvel Universe. It's a tabloid sensationalist rag, but it is also a legitimate journalistic piece. I always think of the Daily Bugle not dissimilar from the Village Voice, which back in the 60s was actually a real tabloid newspaper, but that did have its opinions and its perspectives and its hype, but that strived to be a legitimate newspaper. And so in that case, the Daily Bugle in the comic books, and in here, the National Register here is likewise a legitimate newspaper that does deal with things that may be sensationalistic.
Yeah, but they still give credence to the reporter that's creating creating stories versus, letting them, reporting the truth. That one reporter who's going in and planting stuff. But the other element that I thought was cool about this was, we got to see a bit of Jack McGee trying to defend him having to, figure out where the Hulk's going to be and then be there. He was actually getting flack from his boss to say, look, nothing's going on here. There's, you're going off to all these different places and we're footing the bill for this. And what do we have to show for it? Some fuzzy pictures, so let's get you into another story. And, you do that for now. Don't worry about this Hulk thing. If you want to do the Hulk thing, that's on your own time. And I love that element of this story. I love that part of it where, it's now Jack McGee where he's like, I know something's there, but now I've got the brakes put on by my boss. I can't be going off to Hawaii, for instance, to, on the National Register's bill, to do this, at least at that moment.
Yeah. That Hawaii junket really killed him. It's like, really, Jack, you want to go to Hawaii to chase the Hulk? Can't imagine why else you want to go to Hawaii. And for what it's worth, when we get to that episode, he's in he does one half, half professional effort to find out what's going on and then just walks away. Never seen again. It's like, I'm going to get some Mai Tais and wait for the Hulk to show up at the next luau. Because
that's the call he got. He's like, hey dude, the Hulk showed up at this luau. He's like, all right, I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. But and just shows to show you. And again, like we've said, it's just this idea. It's like, are the writers really building a universal continuity here? Are they saying, you know what, we had him go to Hawaii and do nothing? We got to have his boss really rake him over the coals. And here, in this episode, we're getting that. We're getting that his boss is saying, Jack, you are going all over this country, to oddly, resort towns where there's fun things to do. You've gone to, you've been to Miami. We know you went to Hawaii. We know you went to Antioch. Yeah. Where there's a ski resort town. What exactly are you doing here, Jack? Why is it the Hulk always goes to the trendy spots? You're waiting for the Hulk to show up in, he went to Times Square too. I was gonna say, it's like, what's a big tourist trap? Hey, went to Times Square. I gotta go to Times Square. I gotta go see the Wax Museum.
Yeah, let's not forget Las Vegas.
And Las Vegas, all on the company dime, Jack. This is why this gets suspect, Jack. That's all we're saying. The Hulk shows up at Dumb, no one's gonna question.
So getting to the episode, you have the other reporter. He's going in, planting stuff at, of course, the restaurant that David works in, and he's a dishwasher. And so David is there. He sees them trying to plant stuff. He tries to stop them from doing what they're doing. They, of course, take photos of him. And then, as a result, one of the guys that's the photographer in his past life was a wrestler. He has a moment with David, pushes him down, pushes him underneath the table. I think he also smears him into a pizza before he puts him under the table. And then he's under the table, and then we get our first Hulk out. David Hulks out. Wrestles the guy, throws him outside the screen door. And then, of course, that's right in front of the two co-owners and our Pat Morita character, who basically says, all right, that's enough of that. I'm gone.
Which I felt false. I did not feel that. And I know they did that for comic relief, but I felt that kind of felt false for a professional chef. And and just got rid of a character that, didn't need to go away right then.
Right. And then, so then what we have is, now, they had that moment, and then all of a sudden we're back. How did they transition back now?
Well, like most anything, David eventually turns back, and then
yeah, they had pictures of that the other reporter took of the Hulk. And then McGee confronts the other reporter about his ethics. And he's like, "Hey, I've got these photos of your Hulk guy." And he's like, "No, I don't want to use them because you're who you are." Yeah, because of who you are. And so we get to see our ethical, dilemma of McGee, which is great. And then
topical for it, we do get a nice bit about tranquilizing large game.
Right.
When people become, and just to, which of course, hey, it's an issue. We bring wild animals into cities, which I love. Quite frankly, I love going to zoos. I'm not going to deny that, but obviously, every so often it does cause problems that need to be addressed, and we get the tranquilizer dart introduced, as well as Jack McGee getting a tranquilizer dart.
Right, which we need later on in the story, right? Right, we need that later on in the story, and then so that gets introduced. But then McGee also has another story where it's involving astronomical fortune tellers. Yeah.
It's the Astrologers Convention, which I thought they kind of left some money on the table. They're not having the astrologers actually be real. I really, astrology can be so vague as it is. It would have been nice to have the astrologers say, "Oh, yes, you're going to be experiencing this coming soon." Like, "Oh, I see you will be confronted by the white whale you have chased for so long, but it may not end in the way you hope." It's just something which is completely vague and meaningless, but that as a watcher you can say, "Oh, I get what they're saying." It would have been nice to introduce a little bit of magic into this universe, since they do exist in a magical universe, but that's money left on the table.
Yeah, and that sets up how David gets into the National Register to poke around, because he goes along with the those people, with the convention, and acts like he's one of them, and then it gives us a moment where he's actually in the same elevator with Jack McGee, which was really kind of funny. So I always love those near misses moments, and then he basically picks up a poster board and covers himself, to keep Jack McGee from seeing him, which is always fun. And then what happens? We got then
we get the brunette walking in to pretend to be the mistress of the owner of the paper,
right?
Which I guess she had bigger breasts. I guess that was the implication. It's not like she had, it's not like she had Dolly Parton breasts. She just, she had adequate bosomage, and I suppose they put that on display. I didn't, and honestly, I thought she was a great actress. I thought she did well in the part. I thought that both actresses were great. I just didn't necessarily see why that one was the obvious choice for the mistress versus the blonde. I guess the blonde was maybe more tough as nails, but I don't know. That part felt a little weird. Except of course we got that great bit by the night watchman who basically, as you said, wanted to adopt her.
And I see the brunette as being more of the, she plays off as a ditzy character, but there's a little, she's smarter than she lets on.
Yeah.
And I saw that play on that, so
Yeah.
it was a
I
kind of
guess,
a three
yeah.
elements, Three's Company type moment,
Yeah.
kind of comparison, if you will.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, I felt the blonde was the more aggressive person, thereby the more sexually aggressive person. So,
Okay.
but maybe that's my own fetish. I mean, maybe that's just where I'm at. It's like, oh man, no, that blonde, that's the one to be the mistress. But yeah, but it was a nice way to work the characters in to infiltrate. Infiltration, it's always a trope of any heist or spy bit that to say that the best way to infiltrate is to be obvious. Usually they say the best way to infiltrate is through a kitchen. That you just be the obvious guy coming in with the groceries and come into the kitchen, and that's how you infiltrate. But being the mistress seems just as good. Because no one knows who the mistress is, except that there's probably a lot of them. So like, you're this week's mistress. Okay, yeah, I'll let you up.
And that's basically what the security guard alluded to.
Exactly.
Right.
And wanted everyone to try his wife's soup. I don't know if his wife's soup was just that good, or he just didn't want to drink it himself. Because later he offers it to Jack McGee. He's like, yeah, no, I'm okay. When Jack McGee turns down the wife soup, I kind of got the implication that wife soup wasn't that good. It's like, yeah, I know.
Probably just Campbell's.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I like Campbell's soup. That's good soup. That's mass produced for millions. And if you build this Campbell's, I'll eat some Campbell's. But my wife made a soup. It's like, okay. I don't know what your wife put into the Campbell's mix, but I'm gonna call it not today.
All right, so we actually got David inserted into the printing press area where we had the moment where he was trying to stop the presses, hence the name.
Yes.
And then he actually gets his coat lodged into the press, and that causes a Hulk out. So we have another Hulk out where we actually have him where he actually extracts like the drum from the roller or whatever it is, from the actual printing press. So he stops the actual press going forward of creating the register storyline that he's trying to stop. So that moment is stopped. They've got that saved. So his picture's not getting printed.
Quick fun fact.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This actually happened. My father actually got his hand caught in a printing press once.
Uh-oh.
And because I actually remembered this when this happened. So, remember my dad when I was a kid watching this episode? My dad said, "Yeah, that actually happened. It hurts. It is really painful." But when I'm watching it, I also realized, several issues have been printed by now. So Banner's face exists on some. Obviously, no one's ever going to look, but it is this interesting point that yes, he stopped the presses before they go to mass sale, but there are a few copies out there with Banner's face in them, which I found interesting. But and for what it's worth, we're recording on Father's Day. It was a good memory for me, for my father, of him once mentioning that he worked in a printing plant and he got his hand caught in the printing press. And printing presses like this, generally speaking, they do have safety mechanisms in place to keep you from being essentially killed in them. But it is not unpainful to have your hand caught in a printing press. It is exceptionally painful. So that explains both the trigger and Banner's survival. So good for that.
And we got a shout out to your father. So outstanding.
Yeah. I miss the man.
So he's no longer with us.
Yeah. No, my dad passed a few years ago. My mom just passed recently, and yeah, it's as it turns out, as you grow older, so do your parents. And so that is this conundrum of life, is that eventually, barring your death, your parents do pass away before you. And it's like, oh, now I have to face that reality that my parents are gone and I am alive.
Yeah, I'm with you on the father side. My
Yeah.
my father passed away when I was 11, so I
Uh,
know I know how that feels. So
yeah.
I'm with you, Charlie.
Yeah. It's, the most you can hope for is to get enough stories to carry with them as you go on and convey them to your children.
Yeah, I didn't have a printing press story, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, not everybody gets a printing press toy. My dad, he was a good story guy. He had, he worked in a uranium mine. He got caught in a printing press. Mostly, he was a butcher.
All right.
And yeah, well, hey, it's a living. And it gave me a real appreciation for the subtle complexities of meat that most people don't even care about.
I like a good slab of meat.
Yes. Well, it's always the thing about meat is that butchers usually want the meat cooked dead because they've been dealing with blood and gore all day. They don't want to think about the death of the meat anymore. They just want it. They want the blood cooked out because they've had enough blood for the day, which usually causes problems with the chef because the chef always, wants it rare because that's where the flavor is. My dad was actually a really good cook as well, so he was somewhere in the middle there. But I've gained a great appreciation of both the kitchen side from my family and the production side from my family, just because basically always order on the rare side, but it's okay to say medium. If you're ever ordering meat, just say medium. Let the chef decide what medium is and just eat it because it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think we're way digressing, and I
Yeah,
I, I really want to talk more about like steak and maybe even brisket, but let's not go there yet. Let's stick with the
yeah,
episode.
yeah, I do. Well, this is a restaurant themed episode, so it does work.
No,
Don't let me
actually, it
even get
does.
into my whole time as a pizziola. I'll tell you all about how to cook Italian food.
Oh wow, now I feel like we have to talk about that. But let's stick to the episode. I want to come back to that though. I do. Uh, so yeah, where we had the Hulk out moment, and then he faces McGee. McGee, once again, where you alluded to, had the tranquilizer gun.
Mhm.
He shoots Hulk, and the Hulk ends up bending the gun so that McGee ends up shooting himself.
Mhm.
And then, so we have both of them kind of having this issue where they're kind of drugged, which we saw in a
Yeah.
previous episode with the Hulk, where he had that moment where he was drugged. What was that episode?
That was Life or Death.
Life or Death. Thank you. So we
Yes.
had
No.
that same kind of moment with Lou Ferrigno here. Once again, great actor. Having that drugged moment. He's got some. I think there are 500-pound spools of unprinted newspaper or something like that he ends up hitting over to try to get free. He finds a quiet moment. He's able to transform back. McGee shows up right around the same area. Once again, another near miss thing, but this time McGee is so drugged he doesn't realize who he's looking at, so he doesn't realize he's looking at David Banner.
Yeah. But now,
Because in his drug-induced state.
in that, do you think so? Because, and again, I have to headcanon it. Because in my headcanon, what you're looking at here is yes, the Hulk is drugged, but McGee is so hyped on the adrenaline of seeing the Hulk that he's actually fighting off the drug. And because what you wind up with is that both succumb to the drug at the same time. And it's like, you know, if this was enough to take on an elephant, why isn't Jack McGee pretty much down earlier? And in my head canon, it's that because Jack McGee has that same thing, that same secret strength that all humans have, that he is awakened in that moment and he is fighting that drug. He says, no, I've got the Hulk and I'm going to be with the Hulk. I'm going to find out the secret. And he's just fighting and fighting and fighting at the same strength level as the Hulk. You know, Jack McGee just doesn't have a reason to pick up a 500-pound bale of paper to throw it. You know, he's chasing after the Hulk. He's fighting that drug. Now, that's purely headcanon. Because if you take away the headcanon, this makes no sense that Jack McGee is awake long enough to catch up with the Hulk.
I can follow you on this one. And the reason why is because of what happened earlier, where we knew that it was such a driving force for McGee, where he's like, I'm going to continue to research this, even though I don't have the backing of my boss. So you know that this is a driving force for him. You know that this is something that is keeping him up later than, you know, late nights. You know that this is something that is just something that he feels this need to pursue to find out the truth. So you know that this is one of those things that he's got this opportunity and it's now within his sights. It's in his home territory. So
Yeah.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. But sadly doesn't clinch the deal.
No.
I mean, and again, this is why I'm going to say it. Shout out to Marvel. Make the McGee Files. Make a Marvel television universe, pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe comic book about Jack McGee hunting down all of these characters from the 1970s to 80s. Because these are stories that need to be told. You know, these are great stories that could have great implications and understand. These are great ideas, and it's really sad that there's this great plethora of concepts that have been left on the table, much like much like so many things get left on the table by various stories that could be explored that are, you know, just not so much being explored by the people who own the rights. So
right.
that's my opinion.
No, I agree with you. There's plenty to follow up here and to fill in the gaps. I would so love to see that. I almost feel like we almost need to start writing, Charlie.
Yeah.
Anyway,
find a place where you can put because I've trust me, I've got fan fiction for days. If I can find a place to put good non-pornographic fan fiction that will be read by people who are interested in fan fiction, I would love to know what that is. So if you know of a place to post
Charlie,
non-pornographic fan fiction, please email me.
Hey, Charlie, we have a blog.
Yeah,
we can put it there.
Yes, I should. I really should. You know what I'll tell you what the biggest problem is.
We should start McGee Files fan fiction. That would be awesome.
Here's the biggest problem. Right now, my computer is no. Actually, my biggest problem right now is a new computer, and Microsoft no longer bundles a Word compatible writing implement. You get a notepad, but it's not as good as the old notepad. You don't get a real text-based writing program,
right,
with the current internet, the current Microsoft package. You can pay for the 365, which is it's a reasonable amount if you did not have $0 in your checking account. So it's like there was a time when buying a computer gave you just for free a word processing program that was adequate for writing. Not so much anymore. And so I've got to sort of sort out what I'm doing writing wise to get to that point. But yes, you know what, Rob, write this down. We're gonna start the McGee Files. I'm gonna write a. I'm gonna work on this week a McGee Files first entry. And I've said this a lot that I've never followed up on, so this may not get followed up on, but I'm going to work on. If you guys like the idea of a McGee file, write to me, write to Dave, and write to Rob, who runs Southgate Media, and say, give us this McGee Files blog, and I will make sure it gets created.
And we can put it right in the 80s Reboot blog, and that'll be where it's housed.
And that will be where it is, and it will give me a week because I have to go back to Michigan this weekend for my mom's memorial service. It's been a fun week for me. But after that, yes, the McGee Files are coming soon. I'm going to promise you, Dave, I'm going to promise all of our listeners, there will be a McGee File soon with McGee tracking something. I just have to sort it out.
Yeah, I just think working the transition between the episodes, I think that would be fun.
Mm-hmm. That would be great.
Yeah. So back to the episode. We had that near miss. McGee misses out because he's drugged. Next thing you know, David is just left. He didn't even give 2-week notice. He left the restaurant. He's on his way. And then what we have left is the 2 co-owners of the restaurant. They're looking at the picture and commenting on how much they're going to miss him. And then at the same time, they,
from the back.
We understand that the picture's from the back, right?
Yeah.
So, fun way to end the episode.
Except we are left with the question of who's in the kitchen.
Right, exactly, because now we know Pat Morita.
Both of these people are clearly from the previous presentation front house people.
Right.
It's not like you had a back house and a front house person partnering to make a restaurant. You have 2 front house people, and then they hire back house people with maybe somebody's grandma's pizza recipe. Which neither one can agree on, so
too much garlic, not enough garlic, exactly.
Yeah, so exactly. So hopefully they hired a nice Mexican to run the restaurant for them. For what it's worth, it is kind of a point in this whole episode where you're like, wow, neither one of you can do books, neither one of you is the cook. What exactly are you 2 bringing to this restaurant aside from maybe some capital, which you've promptly lost? It is a convoluted presentation, but for what it's worth, David gets 2 women fighting over him because that was apparently something Bill Bixby really wanted in every episode.
Yeah, he had fun with that. You could tell.
Yeah.
So do you have final thoughts on this episode, Charlie?
My final thoughts on this episode was that it was really good. The final thought is that as much as you can pick apart any bit of story from 1978 or 1979 or 1980 or 1981, whenever you're going to be looking at these Hulk stories, as much as you can pick them apart, there's still a core of greatness in these stories. And I think what makes this great is this idea of Jack McGee as a reporter, as a person with real integrity, approaching and dealing with the complexities of, the world of for what it's worth, business. Here you have Jack McGee. He wants to tell a story. He says the Hulk is an issue. The Hulk is a thing. And in a more heroic universe, the Hulk really is a thing. when you think about later in the late 80s, when we get Daredevil and Thor and possibly a She-Hulk into these storylines, and how these beings are going to affect the world and the cultural landscape when you talk about them, that's important. And here we have Jack McGee at the very start saying Hulks are important. And people basically saying Hulks don't sell papers. Doesn't matter that it's important. It matters whether it sells papers. And, that's a statement as true in 1979 as it is today in 2016. 2016. That, doesn't matter how important an issue is, whether you're television or print, you want to sell eyeballs. And if those eyeballs aren't there for a Hulk because the Hulk's importance isn't yet understood, then the Hulk gets pushed to page, 16, and you better find something more interesting to write about Jack McGee. And, in our modern era, with the death of newspapers, with the end of print journalism as we know it, I think there's a real power in what we see in this episode. But that's me.
Yeah, my final thought on the episode is, and I'm going to be a little different than I was on our previous episode. I was, really critical around what it is that, why we got the Hulk outs. And, if I don't have either my Jack McGee moment, or I don't have my moment where he's trying to cure himself, I seem to be a little more critical of the episode. And this one was a fun episode, just absolutely fun to watch. It was actually the humor elements. I love the fact that Bill Bixby got the moments there with the two women that co-own the restaurant, the Pat Moriarty. Morita, thank you. Pat Morita, having the moments with him, the interaction, so much Jack McGee in this one was just absolutely just fun to watch. Great episode. So I can't be critical of those other things that I normally am critical of. In this particular case, I just really love the fact that it's a fun story and it's great to watch, and it's just and that's the reason why I like the episode. So I highly recommend the episode. I'm a big fan. So yeah, I can't pick. I don't have any bad elements to pick on this one.
Yeah, although I will say this: when we start writing the McGee files, Pat Morita's character is going to become a more important character. We're going to see him showing up at various restaurants throughout various superheroic occurrences that Jack McGee shows up at, and he's just going to be every episode. He's going to be like, "I'm done. I'm done." Ninjas, crazy, super, crazy cosmic cubes. I'm done. I got to go to the next restaurant. This is too much for me, and that's going to be his catchphrase. I'm done.
I'm looking forward to reading that.
Yes,
and contributing to it. I don't want to leave Charlie out there on his own. I want to contribute to this also, to the McGee files.
Yes.
All right. So McGee, Charlie, what are your social media credentials?
My social media credentials. Now, friends, I have not been able to live tweet The Incredible Hulk 7 o'clock on Saturdays Eastern Time in the last several weeks. And I understand that is disappointing. And I probably will not be able to do it this week because I'm traveling to Michigan for my mom's memorial service, and it's going to be a hard thing. And this last weekend I was doing laundry, so I could have this weekend, this Sunday free. It's everything gets in the way. But if you would like to tweet along with me with whatever I'm tweeting, please follow me at Twitter at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality, if not consistency. And you can always write to me in that old-fashioned, the way our parents and grandparents did, email fashion, which is slow and takes some time, but we all read it and respond and we like it. Please write to me in the email style at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's super connectivity blog, BLOG, @gmail.com.
And that's a good reason not to be doing live tweeting, Charlie. So I respect the reason that you're giving. Life happens, man. We gotta, this podcasting, live tweeting thing, it's a hobby for us. So it is one of these things that's a passion for us. So we do it as we have time, but real life happens, man. We gotta take care of what what's happening in our world, right? And so it's all good. It's all good. So
no worries.
Yeah. So I'm Dave. Take care of our 80s Reboot accounts. That's 80s Reboot at tumblr.com, facebook.com/80s Reboot. On Twitter, we're at 80s Reboot. Email at 80sreboot at gmail.com. And the future spot for the McGee Files fan fiction is going to be on our blog, which is going to be southgatemediagroup.com/80s Reboot blog. So please be checking that out. I'm excited to be able to get that out there. Hopefully we're going to find somebody that'll be able to even give us some good art or something that we can include with it. Who knows? But anyway, we appreciate you hulking out with us, and have a great night.
Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave. I always enjoy this. I don't know if you've seen the next episode yet, but it's pretty cool.
No, I haven't yet.
You haven't yet? Yeah, it's nice. It follows the pattern, although it's where we start to get into this really interesting thing that has been set up, which is that David Banner has limited options, and I liked the next episode. I've watched it, which is, I think it's called Escape from Los Santos or something like that, which doesn't make a lot of sense translating the Spanish, but I could be mistranslating there anyway. So yeah, looking forward to that, talking to that about that in about 2 weeks.
All right, cool.
Cool, man. Okay, take care.
All right, Charlie. Good night.